somebody like somebody like Beyonce and a few artists that are typically uh, very like invested in um, the the energy that their music is outputting from the beginning to the end. Um, they are a bit more precise with their targeting.
Sure. So you said you were writing that at home, DL4 pedal. You said they called you and said she wanted to cut it tonight.
Yeah, and it was yeah, basically they heard the demo and I don't even know how much time passed, maybe a week,
Oh,
and then I got a call kind of around the time when I signed the deal,
mm.
and like she wants it. So I was just about to, or I was on tour actually with James, um, and sent the stems off, and and then didn't really hear the finished product until shortly before everyone else did.
Welcome to the New Music Business podcast. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business. My guest today is singer-songwriter Kevin Garrett.
Can we cut to the chase here? 'Cause we've both been there before. Where do you wanna take it?
He is an extremely talented R&B, soul, neo-soul singer-songwriter based out of Pittsburgh. Beautiful, angelic voice, incredible songwriter. I'm a big fan of his. This was actually a real treat to speak with him. Now, I need to make a little technical caveat note. We're both coming to you from our homes. We're recording this in quarantine. And we did this over Zoom. Unfortunately, the technical gods were not in our favor in this moment, so it gets a little glitchy. So if you're hearing sentences kind of get chopped off, or you're hearing some of that internet glitchy sounds of what you're hearing on many Zoom calls that I'm sure you've been on over the last however long, that's what's going on. So we listened back through it, and we tried to edit it as best we could, and so you should be able to understand him, and it's still a very interesting conversation that we had. We dig into music publishing. He is he's signed to Roc Nation for publishing. He's an independent recording artist. He releases his music through AWAL. Famously, he is Grammy-nominated for writing Beyonce's song "Pray You Catch Me" from her Lemonade album. That's the lead-off song from Lemonade. So not too many 20-somethings can say they have a cut on Beyonce's record. Our interview was really interesting, and I think you're going to really dig it. Of course, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ari Herstand or at Ari's Take, and then please sign up for the email list. That can be found at aristake.com, where you'll be notified of all upcoming events and get regular information on the goings-ons in the music industry. So without further ado, let's cut to it. Kevin Garrett, welcome to the show. This is quarantine sessions right now. Where are you quarantined right now?
I am, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it's nice. I have this apartment I'm never in when the world works, so it's nice to be living here finally.
But this isn't the house you grew up in. This is your own space now.
Yeah, no, I'm in my space.
Nice. That's great. So it's I mean, how much time now? I guess your tours. You had a big tour scheduled for May, June. That's probably canceled at this point, I would imagine.
I haven't gotten the official word yet because this is support, but I
Yeah.
would imagine that pretty much everything's going to be wiped for
Everything's
most
shut
of the
down.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. So I'm curious, how are you spending your days? How are you passing the time? I mean, have you kind of shifted your schedule, and are you now just writing most days? I know you're doing a lot of live stream concerts.
Yeah. I stay active on social media,
Hmm.
for better or worse, just to keep myself occupied and also hopefully provide a little bit of entertainment for anyone who wants to watch. But been writing a lot.
Hmm.
Made the mad dash home
Mm.
so I could sort of get back to my creative space. Also, get to where I'm my healthcare is covering me, and
Right.
a couple other things. But
Beautiful HMOs, huh? Where you gotta be in network and your primary care provider. Got it. Yes.
I've done a lot of writing, a lot of excuse me, a lot of video games.
Okay. What's your go-to video game at this point?
Right now, I've been playing a lot of this game called Apex Legends, which is like a battle royale type game, and then Call of Duty. It's
Okay.
kind of strange. Video gaming is a weird thing to me because I love games, but
Hmm.
I got an Xbox because my friends didn't want to hang out with me in real life. Uh, so I got the Xbox a year and a half ago to hang out with my friends virtually, and now it's like the perfect thing to do. So
Yeah, that's we're all finding ways during this time to connect with our friends in ways that we're not necessarily used to, or in the physical world we don't have that opportunity anymore. So I just did I'm doing a lot of Zoom sessions with family around the world right now, which is kind of nice, and friends just catching up. Um, so you well, first off, I don't know if you know, I'm one of the co-founders of UnCancelled Music Festival, which you played a few days ago.
oh,
So thank you for
cool.
playing that.
Thanks for thinking of that. That was great.
Yeah, we booked this interview like a month or two ago, and it just so happened that when this whole thing hit, a couple friends and I were like, how are we going to help like the artists and the music venues that have all their stuff shut down right now? And so we kind of put together UnCancelled Music Festival just to kind of, have a way for artists to at least kind of play some shows and music venues to make some money, and at least kind of hopefully cover their expenses. And so that's why we kind of launched it. And now we're just, first week into this thing. But yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, such a great idea. And obviously, when Hotel Cafe reached out to join, to let me be a part of it, that was no brainer, obviously. But yeah, thanks for putting that together.
I mean, yeah, and Hotel Cafe, they were the first venue we locked in because they just have such a special place. Well, in our hearts. I mean, I live in LA, and that's my second home. I'm there multiple times a week, every week, either hanging out or playing, or it's just the space to be. And it's been so supportive as one of those kind of singer-songwriter venues. And it's kind of the epicenter of the singer-songwriter scene in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've done a really great job of curating their lineup for this. They jumped on, and actually the festival, we're I think at this point 5-6 days into it, and the festival itself has raised over $75,000 for music venues and artists, and then Music Cares, the charity partner, and Hotel Cafe also has gotten a good part of that to kind of help. That was the one thing, is it's like we cannot have the Hotel Cafe go under. like we were coming together, like if anything we have to save the Hotel Cafe. I mean, that's just like where all of us have kind of grown up musically, and it's such a focal point of the scene here. So that's cool. So you're in Pittsburgh now. You grew up in Pittsburgh. I know you did a stint in New York. Was that because you went to NYU? Did you just kind of stay there after school, and did you graduate?
Yeah, I graduated in 2013, and lived there until I think 2016, and it was it was great. I mean, New York, and specifically like some of the creative communities in Brooklyn, and all parts of the city
Mm-hmm.
motivate you to keep try to like outdo yourself.
I'm curious about what you think the scene in New York, what you think of it. What now, was this the community you were hanging out with in New York? Was it primarily NYU kids, or is there like a music scene that you found a place in the city itself?
So when I first started playing shows, when I got there, it was maybe 2010, 2000, yeah, maybe early 2010.
Sure.
And it was it was a Rock Music Hall,
Yeah.
and
Also
that
part of
was
UnCancelled Music Festival.
and that there's been 15 years this year, I think. We had a show in February there too for that
Wow.
anniversary.
Cool.
back then, I mean, that was 10 years ago now. Wow. The club was still only 2 stages. And I played at 3 p.m. on like a Sunday.
In stage one?
There, yeah, exactly.
Right, the tiny little
Um,
space. Yeah.
and, but it was easy to see, like, if you put the effort in to sort of engage, it's a fairly welcoming community. The NYU community was more of a, in my program at least, a bit more geared in the sort of like alt rock, like punk. I had a short stint in a band where I played bass and wore a fake mustache, and we played like Shea Stadium and pianos and
Nice. Cool.
and yeah, it was fun. But I think sort of my speed is a bit more in the Rockwood sort of vibe, and
Sure.
yeah, over the years, everybody over there has been, it's like the East Coast version of Hotel Cafe.
Right. Definitely a counterpart there.
Yeah.
So you came out with your first kind of release, official release, Mellow Drama, 5 years ago, I guess, almost to the day. And now, did you make that while you were in New York? Did you have kind of a dorm setup, or did you go back to Pittsburgh in your space there to create that record?
So everything was written more or less in Pittsburgh, and the person I was working with was also from Pittsburgh, and we recorded in Brooklyn. We recorded at a studio called Mission Sound, where, and to this day, like pretty much anything I've ever released has been in that room in some capacity. So it's a great space right in Williamsburg-ish. Yeah, it's a nice area to just kind of be creative. He has a lot of old vintage gear and amps and amazing little piano setup. So it's kind of right in my wheelhouse. But everything was recorded there. Yeah.
Well, tell me the name of the studio again.
It's called Mission Sound. It's on
Mission Sound.
Lorimer and Powers. Yeah.
Cool. So, you have, so the setup that you have at home, kind of in your Pittsburgh space and just wherever you might be located, is that just for demos, or do you do any of the tracking that ends up making the record in your space?
A bunch of stuff on Mellow Drama was largely in the studio, but a lot of vocals have made it out that are just on a beat up condenser mic from my bedroom, holding by the XLR cable.
Right.
I have a bunch of keyboards. I don't use too many like soft synths or MIDI instruments. I like to stay away from that. So I have a couple pretty good key presets on the, like this Korg SV1 that I like to use for piano sound, and a few profs and Junos for like synthesizer stuff. And then at this point, I got so many drums recorded from every session that I've done in the studio that there's just a endless well of samples that I can kind of cut bass together until it's time to like go somewhere and put actual instruments.
Oh, wow. So when you're creating, I mean, actually, tell me about your creation process now. So you're not pulling splice samples of drum loops, or just like, any of those loops anywhere. You're actually taking your sessions from Mission with your drummer and just kind of writing to that. Is that kind of the process now?
Yeah, I think there's my own little hybrid library of samples that I love, and then just like live recordings of sounds that I've gotten over time at places like Mission. I just do things what I believe to be relatively backwards, and I like sort of piecing everything out sound by sound, and it takes a bit longer, but it's just the way I do things. I like to think that in when I'm kind of in my room, in terms of what you were saying about getting things demo, I get it to like 80%, and then and then I would like to always sort of take it to another place, if not just to get fresh ears on it, to try some things that I don't have.
And all of the that process to kind of getting it to the 80%, is that 80% of the demo, or is that 80% of the actual final track, and then you take that 80% into Mission or into the studio and then finish it up?
I find that a lot of the stuff that I put in the demo is fairly intentional. I all the time that I spend kind of throwing everything at the wall, um, uh, honestly happens over the entire course of the uh, creative arc, I guess. So like um, the real moment to like pare everything down happens like when you're editing it all. But
Yeah. So right. So for this latest EP, Made Up Lost Time, would you said that this one you didn't actually record much of that in Pittsburgh at your home?
I was working in Los Angeles with a collaborator. His name's Sammy, and he had a very nice studio east side of LA that has just like the right amount of everything you need, and then puts it in a place where I can go somewhere like Mission, know exactly like what I want to add. So you're not kind of spending days on end kind of just thinking about it, because studios still cost money. So
Right.
that's a fun thing to remember.
Nice. Well, it sounds great. I'm constantly just amazed that you have such a sound that's like the Kevin Garrett sound, and it's been cohesive for every record has a sound, and EP, and I mean your full length, but also your EPs, and also just you as an artist and songwriter producer. Um, I'm curious, when you start the process, well, one, do you have a writing phase? Like, do you say, okay, I'm going to sit down and write the next project, whether it's an EP or record? And then when you're in that state, do you say, okay, this is what this record's sound is going to be. This is the world that I'm going to live in this moment. What is that process like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm fairly scattered, honestly, but
Okay.
in a controlled way where I'm sort of being the ideas as they come in the appropriate buckets or folders. So in the album that I put out last year was uh, it was like a culmination of about 7 years of, I mean, my whole life, but like 7 years of like demoing and like track listing and um but I've always looked at things as like larger bodies of work, not just like um one thing. So Hoax, to me, I want to sort of bleed into the next album, and then other projects kind of be on their own islands, and it's a mess.
Yeah. Can you can you give us can you articulate if at all what that world of Hoax is and was when you were conceptualizing it, when you said that these songs didn't fit there, but some of the songs you've had for 13 years. I mean, you've evolved as a person tremendously, I would imagine, in 13 years, whereas like something that I would have written 13 years ago, I don't think I would feel comfortable putting out in the world now saying, hey, this is the best representation of who I am right now. So I'm curious what that process was like, and why you chose certain songs.
Yeah. I think I always wanted to make an album that weaved through the ending of a relationship, and sort of, instead of making it like um this narrative of like a personal experience, try and tackle it from like multiple angles. So you're observing more the idea of feelings versus something that might be too specific for anyone else to relate to. And that was something that I kind of took from that process, that sort of expanded into sort of my overall mission to think less about and nothing wrong with the opposite or any other alternative, but for me personally, thinking less about a thinking less about getting too specific, really diving into why we feel certain things.
So it was almost this album was kind of based on themes and feelings and kind of placing, not necessarily telling stories, specific stories. It's just like, but if you had a song or a lyric that fit with the overall kind of emotional space that you were living in. You're like, this will fit here because this is the emotional journey that I'm going through and I want to tell through this project, this record.
Yeah. And I think with that in mind, like, because I mean, songs are inherently stories for the most part. Then if I tend to stretch back into the more kind of narrative bit, it's at least a bit more accessible for a broader audience to kind of take the song and apply it to something within themselves.
Cool. I want to get into kind of the business behind everything, because this is, after all, the New Music Business podcast. And I mean, I could geek out on talking songwriting and production all day, but most of the listeners of this are artists, producers, managers. And I'm curious because you're totally independent still, right?
Yeah.
Right. And you've been releasing through AWAL distribution for a while. And I'm curious, early on, because, every headline will kind of say Beyonce's co-writer, because you wrote Pray You Catch Me, and that's going to live with you forever. What's Grammy nomination? Not bad at, in your mid-20s to get that. Not bad. So early on, I read somewhere that you were with Roc Nation for publishing. Are you still with them for publishing, or did you switch to Cobalt?
I am still with them.
Okay.
It's yeah, I'm still with them.
Okay, cool. So how did that come to be, and what was kind of the first, like, early on when you were gigging around at Rockwood and you were releasing, this EP, your just initial, very, very early on? What was the first kind of industry looks that you were getting, and who was the first person on your team? Was it a manager? Was it Roc Nation? What did the industry, the behind the scenes, look like at that early stage?
A friend of mine, who is now, I think, more in like film and TV composing, he was like, "You're gonna get out of college, give it a year," and almost a year to the day after I graduated is when I started getting a couple messages here and there about these demos. And there was a couple people at NYU that were a bit younger than me that were going to certain seminars or classes, and somehow the demos got from those classes to the Roc Nation office, and a couple other places too that were interested. And I started recording everything properly. And I was about to also tour the fall of 2014 with James Vincent McMahon. And so it was kind of like a midpoint, a juncture of I need money to go on tour, and I also want to put music out, but on my own terms. And now there's a song that Beyonce wants, and and so I remember it was just before, like, shortly before I went on tour with James. I signed the pub deal, and I'm pretty sure I didn't sign the pub deal. I probably wouldn't have priority treatment with certain, like, correspondences with the Queen. So it was a kind of a fair trade. But since then, that song, obviously behind the scenes and in front of everyone, has kind of given me a bit of a platform to consider myself a career songwriter. But it's definitely also given me. I handed the song off because I knew I had tours lined up, and I knew that I was putting other music out. And hopefully by the time the album would have come out, I wouldn't just be another name on the credit of this album. And it could be something like, oh, well, this artist worked on this album. And it took about a year and a half before the album came out. So by that point, I had already put out the song called Precious, and Coloring and Refuse were getting some really great traction. So when the album dropped, a lot of people reached out to taught, and it was great. I just kept doing my thing. But if there's any learning experience with the publishing deal, I think what I tell a lot of young artists that are free agents across the board, just don't sign anything, because there's probably a chance, even now with the current landscape of streaming kind of being in a different place than it was a couple years ago, you still kind of break wide open with other angles, and obviously, like, resources, it seems to like the number one thing that trips up a lot of independent artists.
Resources, you
Myself,
mean like an advance that they would give you?
yeah, like
they could pay you money
obviously,
for it. Yeah.
fun, but just like access to marketing arms,
Sure.
and radio and anything like that. And it's been great working with AWOL, because I finally have like people who
Right.
are going to that, or we're going until we shut down here, but going to
And just to clarify, for the listeners, AWOL is not a record label. They're a distribution company. They don't own any of your masters. They're just kind of a partner in your distribution, right?
Right. And before AWOL, I was working with ED Baby. I was just putting stuff out, like whatever, whenever it was ready to go. There wasn't like a real schedule.
Sure.
But I guess to go back to the original question, sorry. And
That's okay.
when I handed the song off, I was totally on my own. Didn't really have anyone. I talked to a lawyer about the publishing deal, and then the team at Roc Nation at the time were somebody who I knew from NYU, and a couple other people who were kind of like age, and we were all trying to climb, and so it was nice. And eventually, after, I want to say 6 months, or even less, coloring had kind of done its thing a little bit, and I started working with Roc Nation on management too. I was moving around so much on tours. James was keeping me very busy, and then I was doing like South by Southwests and Communion Music, having me out for like months at a time. And
What's
it was
Communion
great.
Music?
Communion Music is a company that was founded by Ben Lovett from Mumford & Sons. And they are based primarily in London, but they would have Communion Presents nights, and I've known guys in Mumford for a while, and through Communion, and they put me on a handful of tours over the years,
So
and every
I
show
want to. Oh, cool, amazing. So just to kind of hit a few, there's a lot there. And I'm curious about. There's a lot of points that I want to touch on and dig a little bit deeper onto the how, and so and just the specifics of how this stuff happens. So it's now in terms of the publishing deal. Now, when you said I turned the song in, is this a publishing deal like most publishing deals where every song you put out they own the publishing for, or was it just songs that you would turn into them?
It's an admin deal, so like a co-publishing, and it's you'll hear these 4 letters kicked around a lot, MDRC, which basically refers to a quota of writer share that you have to turn in to get through whatever number term on your deal, and so.
You know what MDRC stands for?
It's like minimum delivery requirement commitment or something.
Gotcha.
Okay. And I just know it as like something that I wish I had a little bit of more education on before getting too far into it. But it's I think in 2014, the MDRC type deal is a bit more connected with kind of pre-stream publishing, where more physical records were being sold and bought, and more like the old-fashioned way of releasing music. So in my case, since I am fully independent, the songs that I release don't really count towards my publishing deal.
So it's an admin deal. You have to. So they don't necessarily own the publishing for all the songs that you're releasing on your own, but are they still administering the publishing? So they're helping you collect your mechanicals and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, still administering.
Okay.
And it's been a nice kind of partnership at that end. But yeah, they handle my
Is
catalog.
Cobalt AWOL kind of handling more of the sync side of everything of your music specifically?
Yeah.
Cool. And so when you turn in a song, I'm curious about the publishing process with Roc Nation or just in general, and how that all happens. So did they come to you and say, hey, Beyonce is looking for a song, would you like to submit to her? Or was it like, hey, give us a good song? And you're like, here's How's Pray Catch Me? Or how did that process work?
I definitely right place for timing, but I wrote the song on sitting on an amplifier, messing with a DL4 pedal in my bedroom in Pittsburgh, and had a demo, and they heard the demo and essentially said she wants to cut it tonight. So it was the type of thing where I didn't know what to do. So I said I got to call my dad, and who's a doctor. He's like just like based on the principle of it. And yeah, after it's kind of a bit of thought and sort of going back and forth with my sort of team, getting the deal done. Worked on sort of getting stems finalized and then send it off like that. But typically with an artist like that, I think there's it's fairly selective. Like they're looking for very specific moments and things that can be kind of pieced together to form the narrative that they're trying to articulate. Whereas there's other artists in sort of pop music that you'll go into like camps and things and collaborate with other writers and producers to try and make something that is within parameters of what the artist wants to say.
Right.
But somebody like somebody like Beyonce and you know, a few artists that are typically very like invested in the energy that their music is outputting from the beginning to the end. They are a bit more precise with their targeting.
Sure. So you said you were writing that at home, a DL4 pedal. You said they called you and said she wanted to cut it tonight?
Yeah, and it was yeah, basically they heard the demo and I don't even know how much time passed, maybe a week, and then I got a call kind of around the time when I signed the deal, and like she wants it. So I was just about to, or I was on tour actually with James, and sent the stems off, and then didn't really hear the finished product until shortly before everyone else did.
I remember your I think it was a tweet the morning that Lemonade came out, and you're like, it's cool to wake up and find out that you have a cut on Beyonce's album. And I was always curious when I saw that tweet. It's like, I wonder if he had a heads up or if that was really how it went down. So when did you know that you were actually gonna get the cut on the record?
With something like that, I don't think anybody can really know until the record comes out. But I think with that one, yeah, I heard some version of it a little bit before Lemonade came out. I was lucky to be working with Roc Nation, who obviously they know Beyonce very well. So
Roc Nation is started by Jay-Z and run by Jay-Z. Yes. Right.
Yeah. So I would get some updates. I just tried not to think about it because I knew that if she wasn't going to cut it, I was going to release it. So
okay, it's a great song.
Either way, yeah.
What is the deal like? in terms of how does it work being with a publishing company? Are they setting you up on writing sessions? Like you say, you spend a lot of time in LA. Is that because you're doing a lot of writing sessions that they set up, or how does that work?
I first started working with Roc Nation. They paired me up with some sessions, mostly like sort of larger form things, like a couple camps and stuff. I learned pretty quickly that that's not my speed.
Mm.
Um, uh,
And by writing camps, can you just explain a little bit what a writing camp is?
Yeah, so sometimes artists are looking for new material, whether they want to be involved or whether they want to, buy songs. And so the label or the management team or whoever is involved in the project will kind of reach out to various producers, writers, other types of talent to sort of collaborate on side of the camp, or just be regular sessions that you can do with those people, but it expedites things if you have everyone in the same place.
Mm. So, like for instance, Rihanna would say Rihanna's working on a newer album, and so you bring in all these writers to kind of work on creating songs for the new Rihanna album, and then you
Yeah.
kind of just spend every day writing songs that you think would be good for Rihanna. Is that am I understanding that?
Yeah. So, it depends, like the scale of the artist, obviously, but somebody like her, um, there's so many songs getting sent for a project of hers. So the camps are, um, they can be anything from 6 people in a studio for a week, or a rotating tour of 50 or 100 people that come in and out,
Wow.
and just keep making stuff. And then on top of that, you have like uh, like I've sent stuff via camp, and then I've sent stuff for the same artist in that camp from outside the camp. It's kind of just if you have any sort of insight on what an A&R at the artist is looking for the
Mhm.
project. Being in the camp for me has only really been beneficial with regards to meeting new producers.
Okay, right. So I'm curious about your writing process when you get teamed up with a producer, another writer, or you're doing a session. Who's driving the session? Are you the one in the DAW at the laptop, or are you kind of in the back on your keyboard and somebody else is triggering stuff and working on sounds and that kind of, or do you trade off?
Yeah.
Does it vary?
In most any session that I do,
Mhm.
uh, especially if it's geared for another artist, I prefer, if I can't have the artist in the room, to be either one-on-one with a producer who can run the DAW, run the computer, run the session,
Mhm.
um, and then I can just either like play instruments and write the song and sing it in, and then you move a bit faster.
Mhm.
Stuff that is more for me. I there's a couple people who I've been working with lately who I trust to kind of run the session and
Mhm.
give me sort of creative freedom to jump into whatever I want.
Mhm.
But when it's for somebody else, I prefer actually to be kind of lurking. Yeah.
And for these writing camps, now I've heard various things, but I'm curious about your experience. Do these artists or the labels, are they paying for these writers to be there for their time to write, or is it only on the hopes that your song is going to actually get cut, and then you'll kind of see the publishing royalties from that on the back end?
Yeah, it depends. Typically, I've never gotten paid
Hmm.
until song gets cut. There's some instances which I think are a little less common nowadays because of just how many songs come out, that label or artists will buy songs to then just do whatever they want with them. But upfront fees go predominantly to producers versus writers. The writer share tends to come in on the back end.
Are you, when you're doing these sessions, do you have a say in getting a producer credit from the get-go? Are you kind of part of that process?
It's a like gray area. I think you're kind of towing a fine line between like um, ruining a relationship if something is fairly arbitrary. Like I I tend to play piano on everything that I do. Uh, and and if I chase down production credit every single time I played piano on something, I'd be neck deep in a bunch of emails that aren't going to really result in anything. But I think there's some session where I do a whole lot more. Yeah, which is like dealing with arrangement and dealing with multiple instruments and almost sort of like driving the session from whatever keyboard I'm at. And in those instances, I'll sort of connect with whoever I was working with and say like I feel like this might be fair. But in those sort of, I like to say, fast paced sessions where I'm quite literally just like playing a keys progression or not even playing keys progression, writing the song and singing it, and we're trying to get multiple songs out. I'm purely a writer at that point. So it's definitely over when streaming has kicked off and like music, people stop buying music, definitely become a very sort of blurred space in terms of who is who. And while I think a lot of writers would say that producers are getting preferential treatment these days, there's a lot of producers I know that are getting kind of taken advantage of as well, with sample stems and everything. So it's everybody needs to be on the same team on the creative side, because
Well, that's yeah. I mean, you bring up a really good point. Producers are getting taken advantage of with stems and stuff like that. So I'm curious if there are any things that you've learned or any fail-safe points or tactics that to do now so you don't get taken advantage of. Meaning, if an artist is like, "Hey, can you send me those stems?" You're like, maybe. But like, if I'm going to send you the stems, then we need to work out, let's sign this producer agreement here, let's just sign this what this song is going to be, and that I'm going to be an equal producer on this, or not just a writer. Because if it's just if you're just going to get a writing credit, then they can just have the piano vocal demo and be like, okay, I'm just a writer, and now you go produce it, and you don't need stems. But if you want the stems, that means that you want the IP, you want my creative work, and my production work, and because you want my production work, then I think that it's very clear that I should be getting a producer credit on this.
Yeah, I think with my original stuff, because I am so involved on the production, the people I've worked with have in the past have seemingly been very flexible. So because I'm independent, with sort of trust that we build for one another, and the mutual respect. So I haven't had like too much problem. There's like a couple people, without naming names, who's it's less about them and more about their teams. Where I can't track certain things down without sort of negotiating through something that becomes a bit unrealistic for an independent artist at that point. So there's that side of the coin, but for the most part, with my stuff, I sort of go into the sessions kind of saying, this is how I work. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to take this song, even if you think it's done, to a place like Mission, and I'm going to throw everything, and then the kitchen sink and whatever sticks, I'm going to come back here and we're going to work on it again. Like I've never done that and then kind of like put it out without any sort of credit that. But that it sounds stupid, but like labeling things is very helpful, and keeping like a good record of like what's what, and just putting your initials in all the files. I would just always advise to not be afraid of sharing things, because you never know like where it's going to go. You never know who is going to work on it, and it could be something that could open a big door. Being open to that kind of collaboration has proven to be helpful for me.
Yeah, no, it's great. it's a fine line, because I think what catches up a lot of young songwriters and producers, especially, is knowing when to have the conversation that nobody wants to have, the uncomfortable conversation, the worst conversation that everybody is the splits and ownership and the money and all of that stuff. And so, but like you said, sometimes you get taken advantage of if you don't have those conversations. So I'm curious, when you're sending stuff up, but you just said, like, send stuff off because you never know what's gonna what can come of it, which I totally get and understand. So what have you learned, and what would you kind of advise people? So put your initials on there. That's a good way to track it. But when do you kind of not send something before you have that conversation, or when does that uncomfortable conversation need to happen, and how do you approach those conversations? Or do you just like have your people do it now and say, all right, my management's going to take it from here, or something like that?
Definitely have your management help with this always. I would say that the one thing that I've kind of learned to do is just read the room. If there's, there was a session in recently where I was gonna send a song off, and it was co-write with a couple other people, and there's this notion that if the song gets sent off, it's going to be kind of picked apart, and like other people will get tossed onto it to kind of fill some void. And what I do in that case, like if it depends on the artist, but if still sending it, I'll probably say something like, I want like the reserve the right for like the first round of edits or a rewrite or anything, and make yourself as clear as possible. Because at the end of the day, if you're something off, I don't think that really you kind of relinquished your control. But the ability to articulate yourself, and if you're sending stems especially, they should like what you're doing, to say, hey, you change this, can you do this? And it's, again, just like a trust thing. But with splits and everything, like that conversation's never been hard. There's a few moments here and there where it's like, I did 95% of the song, and I know that you're in the room just on your phone, like looping the thing so I can write on it. But it most of the time, like, the people that I'm working with are equal contributors. I've been very lucky, so it's pretty even splits. And then if it isn't, like, it's kind of a no-brainer, and that just comes with just being as transparent as you can be with anybody. And then when you run into the sort of greedy people that are in there for the wrong reasons, it becomes something where I tend to lean on my team, or at the very least, a lawyer. Yeah.
Right. So if I'm understanding you, most sessions you do, everything is split equally if everybody's in the room kind of creating it at the same time? Or do you actually work that out after the session and be like, all right, so I think I should get 75%. Are you cool with 25%? Or how does that work?
I think it's usually the sessions are so small for me. It's either one-on-one or three of us, and it's fairly understood into it, that everyone's getting the same split. But and again, if it is so obvious that, like, I sat down at a piano and wrote an entire song in 10 minutes, and then we tracked it for the rest of the day, then I can go in afterwards and be like, hey, I did this. You're the producer or whatever, but I like wrote this whole thing.
Cool. In terms of now, as when you have your producer hat on, and you're producing, for either a song for another artist or with another artist, what is your producer style? I mean, are you do you typically get kind of a session fee paid up front plus points on the back end? Do you have a typical deal at this point of what you pitch as to produce a track or a record?
I like to keep it kind of slide, because I don't want to my experience working with certain producers with more track records, like bigger names, I can never really figure out how to like properly like get the songs finished, because whatever is in those sessions sometimes is too hard to track down because of a fee, or because of like points, or because of something that's like unreasonable. And so those songs I tend to try and repurp for like pitch, so then everybody wins if it gets placed. But with stuff, if somebody or with another artist, if they want to like produce something, I, I'd I'm probably, because I'm so invested in my own work, a bit selective with who I want to work on that end. And by that same logic, I'm not really thinking too hard about what I'm getting paid for something like that, because I'm probably really passionate about it in the first place. But I would like to think that if you shift more towards a more exclusive like production type of gig versus everything else, uh, that kind of those terms are sort of articulated for the sake of the artist and the producer, like as clearly and upfront as possible.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, because you're more, I would say, an artist songwriter first. You obviously have production credit, and you co-produce everything that you do. You put out as yourself as the artist. Whereas you're not, I just interviewed Zaytoven yesterday, the producer, right. And so, he's a producer first, and yes, he releases music under his own name. But everybody knows him as the producer, as the, godfather of trap, and that's him. And so it's a very different kind of approach when you are being hit up as a producer and you're going in working as a producer slash songwriter, whereas like you're the artist slash songwriter slash producer. But that makes sense. So you're kind of taking on artists who you're passionate about. So that makes sense. And I'm assuming some of these artists maybe don't have necessarily as much money to kind of pay up front the producer fees. And so you're kind of probably just say like, hey, like, let's work on this together and we'll split it on the back end kind of deal.
Yeah, I think the independent sort of mindset has always been very like team oriented, and there's a clear path to finish line. It just requires a lot of compromise and a lot of in certain areas like a bit extra effort to get from A to B. But the thing that I've learned is, because of stuff like the Beyonce song and other things, I've been put into rooms that are much more uh, used to the sort of major label um, pool of resources and so forth, and so they don't even familiar with the types of discussion like and back end stuff, because the label owns everything. So like the label's going to give them what they want, like 9 times out of 10, and the negotiation with a company instead of negotiating with a singular person. And so it's just a slightly different dialogue in that world, but definitely with whatever I'm collaborating on for my own stuff and from working with, I always try and be just vocal out, like, this is something that has been built for years from the ground up, and is as authentic as it gets. You're not going to work with somebody who's more honest with my music or their music as I am. That's kind of what I'm always trying to chase after. And so if you can keep that kind of mentality, and I guess it's about like remembering like where you come from, which is helpful. So like I
Stay
just
humble.
said,
Hashtag stay humble.
yeah.
Right. That's cool. No, I appreciate that. So Kevin, I know you got to dip because you got a live stream concert, I believe, for Billboard in like 25 minutes. So I'm gonna I just have one final question that I ask everybody who comes on the show. What does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
Great question. Yeah, I don't ever want to feel like I made it. I think obviously I've been very lucky to call music my job in whatever capacity. I've been luckier to call my original music my job for the time being. And I think that I have a lot that I want to do. I have a lot of things that a lot of people I want to work with, a lot more music, and I think something along the lines of interview that Donald Glover had said. Childish Gambino was really kind of in its infancy, but he was a fairly successful TV writer and comedian and actor at that point. And yeah, I don't know that I want to feel like I've made it, because that would I think it's easy to set a goal, but I don't want there to be some kind of end cap for what making it is defined as, because then I don't want to lose ambitious energy that has gotten me to the point that I'm at now, because it's going to hopefully push me a bit further in the future here.
Love it. Kevin Garrett, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.